Hello, this is Dr. Sue Spencer. Today we'll be discussing EDCO 350 Module 2, Common Student Learning and Behavioral Characteristics. Learning objectives for this module include student characteristics common to the typical classroom. What effect might students' academic and social characteristics have on teaching and learning in my classroom? How do I use what I know about students' academic and social characteristics to ensure all students can learn in my classroom? We're going to discuss these topics based on a framework for making instructional decisions based upon student data and what we know about students' learning characteristics. There are 4 areas of academic difficulty common across all groups of students. This is helpful because it's easier to make accommodations when you understand that students are more alike than they are different. So when deciding how to make accommodations for students in terms of their behavioral and academic needs, the first thing you're going to do is look at their basic academic skills. Students tend to have strengths and weaknesses or deficits in the areas of reading. Are they reading on grade level? So you can look at permanent records and all the data on testing to determine what their reading level is relative to where you need it to be, what you're teaching. Are they having comprehension difficulty? Is there difficulty with, or do they excel with math, computation, and reasoning skills? How is their spelling? Are they good spellers or poor spellers? What about written communication? How well do they write and organize their written work? And can they recall information? So once again, what you're doing is you're thinking about what you're going to be teaching, and you're going to be comparing it to what the students can do coming in. So you have to have that information in order to choose instructional materials and methods for teaching. Because if you'll recall, everything you teach is going to have, that students must have the ability to comprehend. They must have the ability to read or to understand verbal instructions or verbal material. Okay, so from that perspective, that's the first thing you're going to do is look to see where the students are in terms of their basic academic skills. And all students will have difficulty in this area, possibly for different reasons. It could be that someone has a learning disability, which makes it difficult for them to process information. They could have a behavior disorder, which means maybe they're out of school frequently because of behavior-related reasons. They're in school suspension, or they're skipping school, or you could have a person who has mental retardation and is below grade level due to their sub-average intelligence, or you need to realize you could have an average student who's behind because maybe they transferred often, their parents moved around a lot, or it could be because the teacher they had previously didn't prepare them for the material you're teaching. Also, it could even be a gifted student. A gifted student can have difficulty. Maybe, not everyone who's gifted reads well. Not everyone who's gifted excels in math. So the point is, everyone is going to have potentially some sort of difficulty in this area. And the difficulty could be simply because it's new material. So take all of those factors into consideration when determining what you're going to teach and how you're going to teach it. Next, all students have difficulty and need to be taught how to take tests and how to remember the information you're delivering. So all people, for the various reasons that I just mentioned previously, might have trouble applying new information to test questions. They might have difficulty remembering what it is you want them to remember and then applying it to a test. Some students have poor test taking skills because they don't take notes well, or they don't study well, or no one's taught them test taking strategies. So as you're going along and you're planning instruction, you want to make sure that you give kids note-taking guides or graphic organizers or something like that as you go along, so that it'll help them to remember the information you want them to remember and help them to apply it on test. Thirdly, students can have difficulty with social skills and knowledge. We assume that kids come to school knowing how to behave, but in fact, we know that not everyone is being taught the social skills that we would like them to have learned at home, or they may not be able to learn by imitation. Students with learning disabilities, for example, have some can have a nonverbal learning disability, which means they don't learn well by imitation. So you'll need to not only speak, but also show them how to do it and provide written material. Some students don't follow directions without instruction, or they have difficulty accepting criticism. And by criticism, I mean feedback. So they may not ask for feedback, they may see it strictly as criticism because they've been criticized so frequently for not doing well. So you'll have to teach them that feedback is a way of improving. Some students don't work well in groups. This could be because they don't know what they're supposed to do. They may need a set of written instructions and directions on what they're supposed to do, or they may need some type of a graphic or note-taking guide to help them to take notes on information that they're supposed to share and work on in groups. Some kids need to be taught, not touching others, that's an important thing, or distracting others, or may have difficulty working independently. So these are some of the areas where they might have difficulty. Fourthly, many students have social emotional skills and knowledge deficits or difficulty. Students can have low self-esteem because they've not done well over time. So giving them feedback and showing them how to use strategies and different methods that will help them to succeed will improve their self-worth and self-value, improve their self-esteem. Faulty attributions. If you remember, some students don't understand and don't know why they aren't doing well, and they'll attribute it to things outside of themselves. They'll attribute it to something, like you don't like them, or they had, didn't have as much help as someone else. So we want to teach students that if you do poorly, it's simply because you didn't have the right strategy or method for approaching the homework or the assignment or the exam. Giving that kind of information will help with self-esteem, and it will improve their ability to attribute not doing well to simply tool choice. Low self-efficacy. Those students tend to think no matter what I do, I'm not going to do well. And they'll tend to give up and develop learned helplessness when they have repeated failure over and over. As you might expect, that's going to mean they may have lower motivation. So, in terms of social emotional health and well-being for your students, it's important to help them to improve their self-esteem by understanding if I don't do well, I can fix it. I don't attribute it to things outside of myself I have no control over. All I need to do is choose the right method or strategy to help me do well. That will increase motivation, it will increase self-efficacy, and help to get rid of or eliminate learned helplessness. It's important for you to understand that teachers have identified several areas in which students' academic and behavioral difficulties come into play. What causes those, in other words? Teachers report that social skills deficits like the following are among the biggest factors that affect student performance. Students who don't do well in school tend to have a poor ability to listen, follow directions. They don't know how to ask questions appropriately to get information when they need it. They don't know how to seek help from peers or the teacher. They're not good at sharing, taking turns, working independently. That means either beginning the work or completing it, and they have difficulty working cooperatively. So the point is, those skills, those social skills, need to be taught. And if you remember our 3-tiered model, those social skills are taught in the beginning at Tier 1. They're taught to everybody. You include those just like your rules, routines, and expectations. This is something you expect from your students to know how to use these social skills appropriately, so they must be taught at Tier 1. In summary, remember, students don't choose to fail. There's all kinds of reasons that you've learned about in other courses. Failure can be attributed to disability, cultural differences, language barriers, poverty, moving around a lot as a child. That often happens with military students, or it could happen with students of wealthy parents who travel a lot. Most learning difficulties are the result of a mismatch. This is very important, and the mismatch is between what you expect them to do as students, the material you have to teach that you expect them to learn. A mismatch between that, what you expect, and what they can do without any support. So if you come in knowing as a teacher that all of the students may have difficulty with basic social skills, test taking, social emotional issues, and social skills, that means without a doubt that you need to teach those things to the students. So when you teach any type of content, you also teach them a process or a strategy that will help them to do what you're asking them to do. You can go back and look at your Education 200 modules and other Winthrop course materials to review student characteristics. We'll be talking further in later modules about how to actually apply some of the strategies to help meet student needs and improve academic and behavioral performance.